Okay, good evening all and welcome to Front Foot Official. And as you can see, I have got here Mr. Jarrod Kimber. You can call him an analyst, you can call him a YouTuber, and you can also call him a fantastic movie maker. So, an all rounder is here with us all the way from London, England. So, we'll be talking about his journey and I request all of you to welcome him. It is going to be a fantastic show. How are you, Jarrod?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's start quickly. Jarrod, how did it all start? I mean, how did you think to go through this line? How did you think to be a journalist? Then again about movies, then being an analyst. How all these things came to your mind? Was it pre-planned, or it was your passion, or was it something else?
That's a hard question to ask because you've asked about five different things in my career.
Yeah.
I grew up in a cricket family. My father played, my mother scored, my aunties worked in the cricket club, my uncles played and coached, as did my father. So there was a lot of cricket in my life. As being a journalist, it's kind of completely by accident. I was trying to be a filmmaker, and I was trying to be a filmmaker, and along the way, I basically started writing a blog for fun on cricket, and that blog got very big, and I've had a lot of fun, so I keep doing weird things. People keep paying me,
Okay.
really.
Yeah, that's great. I saw your bio data. I mean, it's fantastic. You have covered almost all regions. Okay, you also got into Wisdom. Any memories of Wisdom?
Yeah, well, Wisden is where I started. So I started on the Wisden Cricketer, mostly on the website, but a little bit in the magazine as well. So they were reading my blog at a time when it was quite an out there blog, and they were saying there's a guy called Ed Craig who's the deputy editor at that point, and he was basically saying, look, I don't know how you're going with filmmaking, but if you came over to the UK, you might be able to, become a cricket writer. And I suppose someone who was working with, Wisden at that point, saying that, I was like, oh, maybe he's right. So I'll come over and I'll see how it goes. And to be fair to Ed Craig, he was correct. So it was really good for me because at that stage I had only ever written for myself, and I'd mostly written films and blogs, and so it was good to be able to write proper articles and learn the trade a little bit more. But to be fair, Wisden also just sort of said, oh, whatever you're doing is working, just keep doing it, which I've been lucky enough in my career, a few people have said that.
It all started with that cricket with balls, as we all know, and again that book which came, you got the best writer award from that sporting club, Ashes 2009, if I'm not wrong.
I think I was
Where is
nominated. Nominated. I don't I didn't win best new sports writer or something silly like that.
okay, yeah. Okay, and about that fantastic movie, Death of a Gentleman. So, how did you get onto that? I mean, can you just share a few things about that?
Yeah. So I was sort of starting in journalism, so I was a couple of years into my career at that point. And while I was going to be going to the Ashes for the 10-11 Ashes, and I was working for Cricket Victoria, Cricinfo, someone else. I've now forgotten whoever they were. And so I was going out, and a young person I knew called Sam Collins. Well, we were young then. We're not so young now, but he was going out as well. We had a chat beforehand. He was actually the Wisden Cricketer editor, the Wisden Cricket editor online. And he's like, I'm going out, you're going out. There's going to be 40 people. What are we going to do? And I said, well, I don't know really what I'm going to do, but I am going to take a camera, and I used to be a filmmaker, so I might do something with this camera. And, that led to a show with ESPN called The Two Chucks, or the Chuck Fleetwood Smiths. And from that, I suppose me and Sam, as much as anything, we got bored. It was a very fun show, but we weren't getting paid a lot by ESPN to do it. I got a job with ESPN, he didn't, which made it, I suppose, more awkward as well. And we just wanted to try something more. And so we thought, okay, well, what are the two most important things in cricket? And there's basically two fundamental questions at that time. It was, is this game that I'm watching fixed? And what is happening in the future of Test cricket? And we went down the what is happening in the future of Test cricket, and that kind of ended up linking up to the corruption within the game anyway. So we kind of made two movies for one.
Yeah. Okay. You have written almost 5 books. So,
Almost
which
five.
book? Yeah, yeah. Which book did you feel the best? I mean, it gave a sense of satisfaction while writing that book.
Uh,
Normally, would love all the books, but which gave you that satisfaction?
I suppose the book I like the most is there's a novella I wrote on my father called The Lily of Camberfield. That's probably the best thing I've written as far as books go. I can't remember how many words it is, maybe 25, 30,000 words. So not very long, more like a long article. The best book is probably their book on Test match cricket, which is the unauthorized biography. And that is, that's the book that will stand the test of time. Oh, look at you. Yeah, Lily of Camberfield. There you go. Rush out now and get it on Kindle. I made that cover myself, actually. I'm pretty happy with that
Oh,
cover. It's probably the best cover of a book I've had, and I made it myself. But yeah, I think the Test cricket book, I think the publishers stuffed it up a bit. I wrote it as a novel, and they couldn't get their head around it being a novel. And so they changed it, and they made it into all these mini chapters. Because they wanted to sell more copies to people who read books on toilets, and I wanted people who actually like books to read it. The cover's a bit odd as well, to be fair to them. But yeah, I think that's the one because I got to write about everything. The two other Ashes books, I think that you've already chucked up on the screen. I love doing them, but they are very much of their time and place. And I wrote them as much as anything to prove to myself and to the industry that I could write books because I think there was a big feeling at the time that I was just a blogger. And once you've got a book out, and as you said, it was nominated for an award and everything, it's sort of hard for everyone to go, oh, he's not a real writer anymore. And then the other book I have is like a collection of my blog posts from the first couple of years of my blogging or second year of my blogging or whenever it was. Again, I love writing that blog, but I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily massively proud of what that is. It's just a collection of madness, really, about cricket. But the Test book was probably the best thing I had written, and it was probably ruined a little bit. But the Lily of Camberfield is probably the best actual thing to read, I would think.
yeah. Okay. Now going to the best part. Why I personally love you is being an analyst. You being an analyst, that is absolutely a fantastic thing for me personally. That's why I like you. And like most of you have covered probably everywhere. You have been to Australia. You know the Australian cricket. You know the English cricket. You also know the Scotland cricket. If I'm not wrong. So, how is the experience in Scotland, and do you really think that the Scottish mindset is? Do they really want to compete in the world level, or it's just that they just want to get into that top 10 or top 15, or remain as an associate nation?
Well, they certainly want to compete. Scottish cricket, I think Nepal might have gone past them, but for the longest time, Scottish cricket had the most cricketers outside the Test playing nation. People played cricket there. I remember a couple of years ago having a holiday in Edinburgh and travelling through the centre of town and being shocked at how many people were playing cricket. Ireland has a cricket history, and it certainly has pockets where people play. And Netherlands is similar, and you've got some newer countries coming through that are getting obsessed with cricket, like Papua New Guinea and Nepal. But cricket is a sport in Scotland, and kind of always has been. It was really just kept in the dark ages, really, by the way that it was run. It wasn't a professional setup. They got embarrassed really by Ireland. Ireland went from behind Scotland to ahead of Scotland. And I think at that point, that was embarrassing for Scottish cricket. And they've really stepped up. But look, if you look at their top four in T20 cricket, you've got Kyle Coetzer, you've got George Munsey, Callum McLeod, Richie Berrington. They've got some big hitters down the order as well, and they've got a couple of really good spinners and some decent seam bowlers. There's a team there. And realistically, what it is about is that team being very good, and then that inspiring other people to get very good, and Cricket Scotland to make more money and to be able to put a system around these people in place. We just saw what New Zealand can do, right? There's absolutely no reason why, if New Zealand can do what they have done over 80 years, why Scotland can't play good cricket. Their biggest problem is probably their weather, if we're being completely honest when it comes to Scottish cricket. But no, the level of talent in Scottish cricket is not a problem. They don't have enough top level players in their system, and obviously their county system is a problem as well. It helps the really good players get better, but it doesn't help the sort of middle players play against the best players more often. So that's where the problem is. But yeah, Scottish cricket is great, and I don't know if I'll ever work with them again, but if I do, for me it was an absolute honour to be able to work for them.
We would love to want these association nations compete with the top nations, because only by that way only the cricket will expand, and it's not limited to top 3 or top 4 nations. And Scotland again have beaten England in that high scoring match in their home ground, if you remember. So they have got the potential. Yeah. So any memories of that? Were you there?
That was before I worked with him. Funny story about that, actually. Callum McLeod was the person who made all the runs. So Callum McLeod, I'm trying to think of when I first started hearing about Callum McLeod. It must have been around 2012, 2013. And Callum McLeod was a fast bowler and came through the English system, and everyone thought he was going to possibly even play for England. He was very fast. But he got called for chucking a few times, and basically clearly wasn't going to be able to continue that career. And so he then rebranded himself as a batter. And I watched teams that he played for. I watched Durham, and I think he played some games for Birmingham, and he played for Scotland. And every time I watched him play, he would fail. And even that 100 against England, I didn't see that, right? And so all this way through, and the first part of my time with Scotland, working with Scotland, Callum McLeod didn't make any runs again. And I don't believe in luck, and I don't believe in jinxes, but there's a certain point where I felt uncomfortable telling him that I'd never seen him make a run in live before. And so I told him just after he made a big score against Bermuda, so that everything was cool. But he's there's a lot of phenomenal talent within Scottish cricket.
Okay, now moving on to the franchise leagues. You have been a part of the St. Lucia Stars, which is now St. Lucia Jukes. Their names changed. So what was your experience, especially when franchise cricket is growing, and how was that particular experience in CPL?
Oh, it was madness. We had a bizarre ownership structure. We were unprofessional off the field. The first day, the team bus left without me or Lendl Simmons on it. Not because we were late, it left early, and no one bothered to count. No one knew how many people were in the squad or whatever. And so there was no one there to count to make sure that all the people were there. Absolutely crazy scenes like that happened over and over again. By the end of the tour, you have a travel uniform, and Kieran Pollard's trousers were about 3/4 length trousers. It looked like he'd borrowed a pair of his wife's trousers. It was an absolutely ridiculous situation. On the field and in the job, I learned more in the first couple of weeks, and probably the first month there, than I probably did, at any other time in my cricket. I was thrown into the deep end. I started off as the analyst. I thought I would be talking to the coach and the general manager. And the second or third day I was there, I was leading a team meeting with, bowlers meeting with Darren Sammy, Kieran Pollard, Mohammed Sami, Mitchell McLennan, KS Ahmed, Rakeem Cornwall. It's a huge thing to go from a journalist to that situation, and I wasn't really prepared for it. I didn't know I was going to be doing it. And then 3 weeks later, I was the general manager of the team because the general manager quit. So again, I then had to learn everything very quickly. Simple things like, how do I get tickets for Candice Warner? Because she's in town with Davey, and they've got the kids that she wants to go to the game. It was a very, very steep learning curve, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever done. It was one of the most stressful things I've ever done, but I'm really glad that I went through it.
Yeah, that's why we call you an all-rounder, because you have been getting through all the phases, and you are doing everything quite successfully. Okay, now moving on to the talk of the town. What happened to India in the World Test Championship finals?
No, nothing. They just didn't win the game. What do you mean?
We have got a question from one of your subscribers of your channel. Abratesh Shahu, my favorite kind of Jarrod videos are those tracking interesting data trends in obscure player stats. Does he have a list of obscure player stats that he looks at every day for these trends?
I mean, my life is obscure players. Like, look, I think I did this on someone else's podcast recently. It's not that I'm going around looking for bizarre players. It's almost like the bizarre players find me at a certain point. And I think, I've been obsessed with Ben Dunk for a long time. If Ben Dunk never had any great stats or any great story, it wouldn't have made me less obsessed with him. I was already obsessed with him, and I'm already obsessed with John O'Wells and, these sorts of more random cricketers and, this new series we're doing on the New Zealand opening batters. So it's not that I'm looking for those sorts of things, but I'm very interested in anomalies. I'm very interested in things that don't quite fit the narrative or don't quite fit what people think, or something has changed. And I think if you look at those sorts of videos that he's talking about there, I think it's very, very obvious that in that particular situation, I'm finding these things and then building a story around it, or I've already interested in the story and then I go looking for it. So I don't think I look for more obscure stats than anyone else does in cricket. I'm probably more likely. I mean, to be fair to the CricViz guys or some of the other great analysts out there, like Vanilla Walla on Twitter, and I'm now, there's heaps of them. There's a great sort of crop of young analysts coming through. They're looking really at the best way to analyze a team. A lot of what I'm doing, or a player, a lot of what I'm doing is trying to work out why that player is good, or why that player is not as good, or why that player is relevant, or why that player is not relevant, or how that player fits into the wider thing, which is a completely different thing. That's not what I'm doing if I'm doing analysis. That's what I'm doing because I'm a storyteller and I'm looking for interesting stuff. And if something doesn't quite fit the mold, I'm like, okay, well, I need to know everything about that now. Maybe I'll be able to find out a new thing about cricket by looking at this one person, or maybe I'll just be able to tell a great story. So, but yeah, I kind of feel, as the general rule, the obscure players pick me, not me picking the obscure players.
Okay. Okay. Now moving on to that World Test Championship, do you think it was the conditions, lack of match practice, or lack of adaptation in the pressure situations? What really happened to India? No doubt they didn't play well, but did you think
what makes you think India didn't play well?
Yeah, but purely because of the fact.
That's my question.
Yeah.
That's my question to you specifically. What do you think, from what you saw in that game, tells you that India didn't play well? I've watched that whole test, and I never sat there going, India hasn't played well. Yeah, I thought New Zealand played slightly better, and maybe New Zealand was slightly more ready for the conditions, and India would have expected the ball to seam more, and it didn't seem, right? But at no stage was I sitting there going, India didn't play well. That's become a narrative because they've lost. That wasn't that isn't the narrative that I saw watching that game. Exactly. Realistically, I thought both teams played really well. It was a high-quality game. It just happened to be that New Zealand batters are probably more suited to batting in those conditions, and their bowlers were certainly more suited to that. And had the pitch seemed like we probably assumed it would have seemed, I think India would have put New Zealand under plenty of pressure. So I think what happens is we watch a game like that. That's one of the things you learn when you're doing analysis is winning and losing is not the best lesson for whether a team played well or played poorly. I thought India played generally very, very good cricket in that test match. It just happened to be that New Zealand played better cricket, maybe had the slightly better of the conditions at times as well, and the ball didn't seam for India, which was a big problem when they didn't have a genuine swing ball team.
That's a fantastic answer given by Jarrod to all those. I take your questions, but I think you have got a pretty satisfactory answer. It's purely because New Zealand played a pretty better cricket on that day. Okay, now moving on. Being an Australian, where do you think is Australian cricket going, especially the domestic cricket, and what is the future of Australian cricket?
Look, I don't cover Australian domestic cricket as much these days to tell you exactly where things are going. They had a big problem a couple of years ago when they took away something that they thought was a weakness and was a strength, which was it sounds silly, but it was a second 11 competition. And that second 11 competition really strengthened Australian cricket because it was almost like a second division. And they then turned it into an underage tournament. And Australia, whatever reason, Australian cricketers develop better when they play against adults than they do when they play against kids. Under 19 cricket and schoolboy cricket in Australia means absolutely nothing, really. It doesn't have the same effect that these sorts of sports do outside of that. And so I think there's still a problem there. There's also, there's a big split in Australia. You've got the test team and the Big Bash all happening at the same time. And then you've got how you develop the players around that system. I think they probably missed out on, in some ways, I almost think Australian cricket's missed out on like 1.5 generation of batters through. There was just a bunch of really talented guys who just never made it. The sort of, this sort of Mark Cosgrove era type level players. And the guys who made it were very flawed or tried very hard. And then the next era hasn't really kicked on. Like guys like Nick Maddinson and Chris Lynn are phenomenally talented players, but they're not test players, partly because of the amount of time they spent playing T20 cricket, and partly because that's where they've pushed themselves. And so I think that Australia's probably missed out on maybe a generation and a half of batters. And then their two best batters are coming through are probably Will Pucovski and Cameron Green. Will Pucovski has mental health issues. Will Pucovski has concussion issues. And Cameron Green is one of those players who looks absolutely brilliant at first class level, but you get him in front of DRS, and I think he's going to go out LBW a lot. That's not to say he can't overcome that, but then you've got the two best, the two sort of best talented players coming through that haven't done that. And there's been just this whole generation of really, really talented younger Australian batters that just haven't made a lot of runs. Travis Head's probably a very good example of that. In previous generations, these guys would have been at a slightly stronger level, and that hasn't happened. But if you can keep finding Pat Cummins and Mitchell Stark and Josh Hazlewood and James Pattinson and even guys like Nathan Coulter-Nile, and I still think that if Billy Stanlake actually learned how to put the ball on the spot, he'd be the best bowler in the world, because we've never seen a bowler his height with his pace before. And the fact that they keep finding guys like that and Jai Richardson coming through, they're never going to be, I don't think they're going to be a bad team while they keep finding those bowlers, but eventually, if you want to be a consistent team, you have to make runs.
Okay, so this is the last segment. After that, we'll be taking 1-2 questions because Jarrod is running out of time. Okay, Jarrod Kimber without commentary is a thing we don't want to miss out. So again, new field commentary. So can you please throw some light to the viewers? How did you enjoy commentary? And again, commentary is a different thing.
Yeah.
So test match with Sofa was one of your shows, I guess.
I've commentated everything. I used to commentate IPL back in the day for TalkSport as well. I really enjoy commentary. Radio commentary, cricket commentary is one of my real passions, and always has been. I never actually assumed I would become a commentator, so I've had to train myself up in many different ways in order to become a commentator. But realistically, it's a great medium, and I've really enjoyed it. So, for TalkSport, sometimes I do ball-by-ball commentary, sometimes I do analyst roles, sometimes I do co-coms. So it's quite interesting for me because I have to sort of work out all three of them. But yeah, I love commentary and would happily do a lot more of it. It's just a matter of time and, people wanting to hire me, really.
Yeah, that was my next question. Are you planning to come to India or be an analyst in any of the IPL teams?
I've certainly worked with IPL teams before. Some in a sort of semi-public way and some in a more private way. I've done consultancy for coaches in the IPL and players as well. Look, I don't think in the last couple of months, especially when the IPL was on, I certainly have had a lot of people ask about me. There's supposed to be 2 new franchises coming in. So that would mean, other opportunities. If someone offers, I'll have a chat with them. I don't think right at the moment it's something that I'm looking at.
Okay, so now taking questions. Ankit Mishra says, cricket with balls, #nostalgia.
Yeah, that was the blog. That's where it kind of all started. It was a great couple of years. There, it's absolutely a mental place. Really, it was a place where I learned to write, so I look back on it very, very fondly. And it was a good. It was a. I think that it helped cricket in a very, very small way. I think at that stage, cricket writing was very, very dour, and cricket writing was very, very report driven. And I think that if anything, I maybe opened some people's eyes up that there was other ways of covering cricket. And if that's Cricket with Balls' legacy, I would be very, very happy with that.
Okay, we have got Yakshit Kotian. You can ask your question, and with that, we can wrap up the show.
Yes, Jarrod, glad to see you. So my question is, which of the rivalry you feel is the biggest rival, whether it is Ashes or whether it is India versus Pakistan?
I mean, it's India versus Pakistan because if something happens in the Ashes, you're going to get some pissy comments from Michael Vaughan. If something happens in India and Pakistan, there's long-term geopolitical problems that can happen. There's also just the amount of crowd. It's quite clear that there's a lot more people in those two places. So no, I think without doubt India Pakistan. It's been a real honour when I worked for Cricinfo. I can't even remember now, but I probably covered 7, 8, 9 India Pakistan games during my career. I don't think I ever covered a women's India-Pakistan game, although maybe I have and I've forgotten, but certainly covered a lot of the men's over that time. And it's just a real honour to be involved in that and to cover something like that. Something that is, it's something that's bigger than the sport, but is because of the sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, especially now with India distancing themselves from Pakistan, which is, from a cricket perspective, one of the great shames. Well, from a humanity perspective, it's one of the great shames. If you're neighbours with each other, it's obviously not an ideal situation. But, realistically, from a cricket situation, those games are just electric. I tell you, one of the funniest things I find about those games is that they're most passionately followed by people in India and in Pakistan. But the crowds, because they don't play those games in India or Pakistan very often, although there was one in Kolkata that I went to, but the crowds are like really middle-class American kids and really middle-class English kids and middle-class Dutch kids and German kids who happen to be like Indian by birth or Indian by ethnicity. So I find the crowds at those games, like India versus Pakistan crowds, I'm not shitting you guys, is the poshest cricket crowd in the world. Because you almost have to bribe about 20 officials to get a ticket to one of those games. Half the time, I remember at the Adelaide game, like they were flying in from in private jets to get to their game. It was ridiculous. It is a posher crowd for an India-Pakistan game than it is for a match at Lord's. There's my hot take.
Okay, there is a fantastic comment coming from Abhrate Shau all the way from Netherlands. Jarrod's video about most improved cricketer is a refreshing take on viewing cricketers, not who is best, but who has the capacity to grow more.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, I thought more sports did it until I really researched it, and because I'm a basketball fan, and in basketball, it's always, basketball has a couple of really interesting awards. One of the awards is, well, they have the best player, which basically means best offensive player. They have the best defensive player, which straight away is very interesting. But then the other two that I find really interesting are the most improved player and the sixth man. And so the sixth man is the player that obviously comes off the bench. And then the most improved player I've always been really fascinated on, partly because it's a really hard thing to define, right? So most players are really good, are really poor in their first year and are really good in their second year, right? And that is because if you're a really good first year player in any sport, you're learning about how the hotels work, how the referees work, how all those sorts of normal things, how the pitchers play and all these things. And then the next year you probably get a little bit better, right? That's a general thing that happens quite a lot amongst sport. But most improved player isn't really about the player who's just come in. It's really about the player who has been playing for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or in Ishant Sharma's case, what was I on with him? About 11 years, I think, in his case, or Saranga Lakmal. Those guys have been around for a long time. So to look at a player who has managed to survive in Test cricket for a long time and then suddenly taken this huge leap forward, it was just a really fascinating thing. And as I said, I didn't realize it wasn't as big a deal in other sports, and so I did it assuming it was this. Everyone knew what a most improved player was, and no one did. So I kind of coined it in cricket by accident. And it was a brilliant way of looking at different players. And, you had someone like Shan Masood, who came into Pakistan's team, failed, came back and did really well. And then you had someone like Ishant Sharma, who was on this constant curve. So who has improved more out of Shan Masood and Ishant Sharma? So these things are really, really endlessly fascinating. So that was a series that I knew we wanted to make longer videos, and I was writing it as an article. I think I was going to write it for Cricinfo and send it off to ESPN at the time. And I was writing it as this article, and then suddenly I was like, I wonder if we could just make this into a video, and like talk to my production team. I was like, if I just did it, is there a way to make this into a video? And we kind of put it together, and look, our videos are a lot more complex and a lot more animated than that first Most Improved Player was. But that's kind of where we got the idea to. Before that, our videos were about 2 minutes long, maybe 4 minutes long for one. And I don't know how long that one is. It's probably 15 or 20 minutes. And that was a big step up. And once we realized that we could do that and we could really put these things together, that really opened our eyes to the ways that we could do stuff on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, he talks about YouTube channel. Do subscribe to Jarrod Kimber's YouTube channel. He gives fantastic videos. Okay, final one, Jarrod. Yeah, here it is, Jarrod Kimber's YouTube channel. Do subscribe. Our subscribers, please go and support him. He's doing a fantastic job, and you will get a lot of cricket knowledge. Final question, wrapping up the show in 2 minutes, Jarrod. Which profession are you going to settle? Because you have been doing fantastic job in commentary. You have been writing well. You have been a fantastic analyst. So any plans to settle down in one job, or you are just loving each and everything?
Look, I mean, I think a lot of people think that I've got this burning ambition, and that's why I end up in all these different parts of cricket. I think that realistically, I just get bored. It's not like there is some incredible driving force within me. It's just like, oh, well, I've done writing now I'm going to do podcasts, and I've done podcasts, now I'm going to do video. I've done video, now I'll go do commentary, and now I'll do analysis, and now I'll do general manager stuff, and whatever it will be. And I think that's what drives me, and that is hopefully what makes me good at the things that I do. And so, no, I'm not a settling person. There are a lot of people that, once they get into a job in cricket writing, kind of like they settle in for 30, 40, 50 years of doing the same thing. And good luck to those people, but I just would lose my head if I had to do the same thing for 30 or 40, 50 years. And so I try and make my life as complicated as possible, not as simple as possible. Actually, I try and make it as complicated as possible, and then I try and organize it as simply as possible, which basically maybe is two parts of my brain fighting each other. But no, I don't think I'll ever do just one thing. I really like doing podcasts, and I really like doing video, but I'm a writer at heart, and I'll always continue to write. So those things won't go away. And if people want to keep paying me to help them make their T20 teams better, or to help them commentate a cricket game, yeah. If you want to send me to the Caribbean for 2 weeks and stick me in a nice hotel and pay me a chunk of money and let me watch Raheem Cornwall and Jason Holder and Kemar Roach, I'm in.
Okay, that shows the beauty. That's what we need to learn. Like, do what you love and love what you do. So we should learn that from Jarrod. Okay, thank you, Jarrod. It has been a fantastic show. We got to know a lot about your life, and hope someday again we will meet you. So final words from your side. Did you enjoy?
I did enjoy. I think everyone, if people are watching this and they're not subscribed to your YouTube channel, they should definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel first, and then subscribe to yours.
Sure. Okay, guys. Thank you all from this side. We'll be meeting with other guests tomorrow also. Do subscribe the channel. It has been fantastic. So do watch it. Thank you, Jarrod, again. Pleasure. With this, we end.
Cheers, mate. Have a good one. Bye.